Cool. Audio check. Hello, hello.
When he finally sits down.
No, we should be on the stream now.
Hello.
Yes, there we go. When he finally sits down.
No.
I was watching the stream, so that was echoing. All right, hello everyone. We are here with Jashank Jeremy and Kai and Zach. We are in week 7 of this in the term, our 8th AMA. Hello, Jashank. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me. As I tweeted out, you've had a long succession of very interesting speakers, and apparently you've deigned to now have me. So hopefully somehow you get a similar amount of interesting out of me. I'm not sure how, but I guess we'll find out.
We're so excited to have you. All right. Oh, this question. So many votes already. What is your favorite and least favorite thing about CSE Discord community?
Oh. Oh. So
You
yeah,
can be brutal. You can be brutally honest. That's in the question.
This is a really good question. Because I've been hanging out in Discord a fair bit, as I'm sure some of your viewers probably know. What do I like about it? I really like that there is a community. One of the things so when I first wound up at UNSW, I wound up with the incredibly good fortune to have the last live Richard offering of 1917. So for those of you who've seen 6441 and you know what live Richard is like, for those of you who have had the luck of seeing live Richard, yeah, that, but it's also, it's all of that 1511 experience, that sort of introductory programming experience. And one of the big things about that was knowing how learning communities come together and people sort of learn together. And I am so glad that even though that concept has sort of fallen a bit by the wayside, things like Discord, things like the Slack when we had one, although it wasn't quite as active, things like IRC when that was a thing, I miss that. And I really wish that, technologies hadn't moved on in that way, because I am personally a fan of those technologies. I think those worked really quite nicely. But yeah, I love that it is such a great community. There is a lot of interaction, a lot of sort of relatively unfiltered discussion amongst students. And it should not be forgotten that, yeah, for some reason, people call me this famous lecturer. No, I'm just a student as well. So it feels very reasonable to be, part of this big student community, and it's really great. I'm quite enjoying it. Downsides, I worry, as I have in the past, when learning communities wind up split across multiple platforms, that there is that what is truth, what is considered correct gets split almost. So you wind up with some people go, yes, we've seen on Discord such and such a thing, which students who aren't as active there don't see. There's a great deal of synchronicity to it. So if there's a conversation happening, fantastic, you can jump into it right then. But if the conversation happened 20 minutes ago, half an hour ago, well, cool, it's gone. So to that extent, I don't like Discord, and it's, I guess, problems with IRC and Slack as well. I don't know how to go about fixing that one beyond sort of bringing more students into the fold. Don't know how to fix that beyond, getting more people in, getting more people involved and actively looking at it. I like that it is an avenue for help, but in some ways I also find that a bit worrying that, it's an avenue for help, certainly, but it's not, it doesn't feel like it's as official a channel for help, because it is, CSE Socks Discord, not the School of CSE's Discord. And yes, there's an amazing amount of overlap between the notions of those people, but also, yeah. Yeah, so hopefully that's a answer that sufficiently makes people happy. And I'm not planning to disappear off Discord anytime soon. I'll continue hanging out with people. The problems that I have with it are problems that we would have with any synchronous IM platform, with any cases of having multiple possible platforms in use. So yeah, I have enjoyed it. I will, unless someone does something horribly, horribly, brutally offensive, like, I don't know, kicks me out, I will probably continue to do so, because it's been great fun. I've enjoyed poking fun, as I am so wont to do.
Cool. Great. Awesome. So that's a win for all the Discord fans out there, I'm sure, and death to community CSC Sock community Slack. Cool.
Honestly, I'm still, in the same way that I'm still mad about the Library of Alexandria, I'm still mad about CSC Sock IRC going away.
Oh, when do you remember when that was? Like what year?
I want to say 2012 or 13 or 14, somewhere in that ballpark. There was a semi-official IRC channel hanging out on Freenode for some years afterwards, but I haven't seen any sign of much life there. So,
yeah,
Discord
maybe
has been much more active than Slack ever was.
Maybe we should move off the community Discord back to the community IRC again.
I would be so in favor of this. I'm sure, however, that nobody else would.
Yeah. Cool. So our next question that's come in here, the anonymous asks, why is C++ such a great programming language? So maybe you can give us some insight into that.
There is a subset of it that can be used with mostly C-like behaviors, and therefore you can be not too surprised. There's a lot of effort put into optimizing C++ and C++ compilers. There's a lot of effort put into building high-performance applications that sit atop C++ code bases. I think there is quite some advantage to C++ existing. I think this question is intended to be sort of an active heckle.
It seems like it.
I can't think why. Given this audience, I can't possibly think why. I would probably prefer... So let me tell you the tale of two large tech companies with very large C++ code bases that do more or less the same thing. C++, being like C, has all of C's great memory misfeatures. One of these companies gets around this by the engineering approach. They throw all this really cool tooling at it, and we get a lot more really nice tooling that does analysis of programs as they're running, analysis of defined behaviors, of memory access patterns, of data flow, of sort of the lock contention and lock ordering and so on. Fantastic analysis tools, really brilliant tooling. And for those of you who use things like DCC or 3C, you get to use all of that because that code is all open source, thankfully, and is incredibly powerful. But the other one of these companies decided that the correct approach was to go, well, it's not really possible to take C++ in a direction that would make it safe in a fundamental way. So how can we change fundamentally the way we approach memory safety? Because most of the bugs you will find coming out of C++ are memory safety bugs. How can we change the way we take on memory safety? And the answer was, how about a different programming language? And I suspect that is where I'm going to, I may as well identify those companies. Well, I'm sure you can all guess which ones they were. The company that took the science approach is Mozilla. The company that took the engineering approach was Google. So hopefully that's sufficiently enlightening answer. I'm sure there's going to be some more Rust-related questions coming. Oh, damn, I said it.
Yeah, well,
Damn it, first shot of the night.
Since it's out of the bag.
Yep.
For anyone who's sort of missing the languages in talks here, C++, the sort of diverging ideas from different companies, Mozilla went and created the language Rust, which I'm sure we'll hear about through the AMA, as Jashank likes this language, and Google made a different language called Go. Jashank, I believe, doesn't like this language quite as much.
That's a nice way to put it.
No.
Okay, there you go. Cool.
Yeah. Okay. Next question is, everybody like to know the answer. What CSE course do you recommend everybody takes? That
Or
is not a
courses.
core course. Yeah, electives.
Oh, man. The hard question. See, every time questions like, what courses should I take, come up, the answers I have never seem to be particularly wonderful because, yes, I've seen a lot of courses, and there's so many good ones to pick from. I would go with the number one, absolutely everybody must take this course. I would consider that to be Comp 6721, Informal Methods, The Lost Art. Carol Morgan, the lecturer of that course, Professor Carol Morgan, who is a incredibly brilliant person. I'm trying to remember if it was his supervisor or his PhD assessor was Edsa Dijkstra, to give you some idea of what we're dealing with here. He's words escape me for just how brilliant that course is, how brilliant the teaching is, how brilliant the way that it changes your mind is. When people talk about 6441 and 3441, a lot of the reason that they talk about that is because it really changes the way you think about like security and risk and so on. It's a mindset changing course. 6721 does that as well. 6721 does that for computer science, for software engineering, and really puts the notion of formalism, of reasoning, of the craft, the engineering craft of computer science back on the table. And I think that is something that too few people in the world have and really should. It's time for tangent time. I have spent a very long time hacking on a graphics driver of late, and there's been lots and lots of madness about it. And you've probably seen it in CSESOC Discord. You've probably seen it in SecSoc Discord if you've seen it there. It shows up in hash memes because it is a meme at this point, wherein I get mad about bad code. This is the sort of thing, and having been following the development of this and watching patches go by that are like, oh yeah, we should introduce a null check here, or oh yeah, we forgot a break. No? What? No? How? What? What? How? How do you do that? And the only answer that I can think of is that the people who are writing this code aren't reasoning about it, aren't able to reason about it. And that right there, the ability to look at a piece of code, design it correctly, implement it correctly, and be assured that it is in fact correct, that to me is the thing that I wish more people had. That is exactly what 6721 goes into depth in. And yeah, I think that is probably my number one most recommended course in CSE. As for other courses, there's a laundry list of interesting courses. Comp 6752, Modeling Concurrent Systems, is another good one. I haven't taken it, but I really want to. Its lecturer is also sort of leading light of the field, and it's an incredible course, I've been told. And everything that I've read about it suggests that yes, it is. Let's see, 3161, Concepts of Programming Languages, 3141, Software System Design and Implementation. I'm really sad that we don't have postgrad equivalents for some of those courses. 3141 not having a postgrad equivalent, I think, is just abysmal. 3161 does. Comp 9164, if I get my numbers right. Great courses for learning about reasoning, for learning about programs, learning about how programming languages work. But that's, I guess, one of the things that really interests me. I am very interested in languages as a way of expressing ideas, and I think those courses do a really great job of introducing programming languages as a language, as a way of thinking about ideas. Communicating with language, the human condition, very much so. I mean, I think everyone should take OS and 1521 and so on, but that's to be expected, of course. Those are the ones that come to mind off the top of my head. But I'm sure there's others that'll come to mind if someone talks to me, I don't know, a couple of days' time. I'll go, ooh, how about this thing? Or, ooh, how about that thing? I don't know.
What was I going to say? So, no, that was great. I'm wondering so we asked you what courses you think everyone should take. And obviously you clearly love informal methods a lot. Is informal methods then your favorite CSE course, or do you have a different sort of reserved one as your favorite that you wouldn't just recommend to anyone, like informal methods?
That's an even harder question. This is like asking someone to choose between their children, I'm sure. Like, I can't think of a course that... Okay, so I guess the course that I have put the most tender loving care into, and I guess the course that I love the most, would be Comp 1521, if only because I have seen into it so much. 1511, I have seen into that one as well quite a lot, and it's amazing. It's fantastic. I did AOS, and I really enjoyed that, and I really loved that course. I'm not sure how it is under 3+, but I have it on good authority that it is as good as it was, or at least on par. It's hard to pick. It's really hard to pick. Courses that I would do again if I had the chance, 1521. If only because I know so much more about that now, and would probably do somewhat better.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I enjoyed 1521. I'm doing OS now. That's awesome. Okay. Back to Discord. Can you recommend a feature for CSEs or Discord boards?
It's there's also a little aside on that one that says, yes, I'm shamelessly shilling the bot, but it's called cross promotion, so I can only assume this one's probably from Waleed.
Yeah, he's Discord.
Don't worry, I'm sure he'll go absolutely bananas when we get to that. Features that I would want to see in a bot include...
All right, Wally, you want to take notes?
Things that I would like to see include ways of linking to courses or expanding course codes, course prereq, just quick off the cuff prereq reporting and so on. Possibly even going as far as program reporting. If only because I find it so handy when it's that time of term when everyone's going, oh, what course? To just say, this course, and here is a chunk out of its handbook description, and here is its prereqs, blah, blah, blah. Having a bot that does that offhand and fast is probably the one thing that I would like. That's sort of all that comes to mind, but I don't know what Discord bots are like. I suppose I'm thinking about them in much the same sense as I would think about an IRC bot. And in that instance, that's the sort of IRC bot that I would want.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to Slack bot as well. But yeah, what was your journey to becoming a tutor and course admin?
Oh dear.
Lecturer? Yeah, how'd you get started?
Oh dear. So let us set our minds back. Holy hell, that's a lot of years. Let us set our mind back several years. It was suggested very strongly to me that I should talk to, or I should get into tutoring. And at that point in time, I was really not a very good student. It may surprise you to know this. A, I had hair. B, I did not have a good first year. First year was not a particularly amazing time for me as a human, and my uni work sort of reflected that. And I accumulated a couple of fails in first year, just the odd handful. But apparently, that still somehow managed to make people go, "Hey, you should teach." Okay, what? Anyway, long story short, I assistant tutored a term and went, "Hey, this is cool." And I gather my tutor also thought that I was okay at it. Or the tutor I was working with, Sketch Healy, who is amazing. I don't actually know what he's up to these days. So I then went, okay, maybe I can tutor next time. So the lecturer in that case, the wonderful, the absolutely incomparable Angela Finlayson, one of, I think, the best lecturers we had at CSE in terms of sort of empathy and relating to students and getting the point across, decided for some reason that I still don't quite understand to make me a tutor, and I just kept doing that. And then I went, oh yeah, I could learn how some of these systems work. And so I learned how some of the systems worked, and then accidentally asked a question of someone that indicated that I might have some idea of what I was doing. And as is usually the case for anyone who shows any indication that they know what they're doing, they're told, hey, do you want to do some more? And so then I started doing a bit of admin stuff, and that's how that chaotic nightmare adventure has gotten to here.
Are you talking about like the one course, or it has been like different courses?
Oh, over a couple of years. Over, I want to say 2 or 3 years.
Andrew Bennett in the chat suggested, was it 2015 that it all get started?
It was indeed 2015 where it all went horribly right. I will say this, 2015 was a very interesting year, and I am very glad that some of the things that happened to me that year happened to me. That's more or less it. 2015 was when I first tutored, summer 2015, then term 1. I was working full-time at a startup term 2. I did 2041. That was fun. Back when Andrew Taylor was much more scary to me. He's not as scary as he looks. I remember running into him in an IKEA and being like, oh my God, it's a wild Andrew Taylor. Oh my God. He's not that scary, it turns out. But he was at the time when I was small and had hair. And I first started doing admin-y things end of 2016, beginning of 2017. And I think I've been adminning at least a course a term ever since. Yeah, thereabouts.
Did you admin the term that you didn't admin 1521?
That is a great
Are
question.
you thinking 2023?
Yes.
No, I did
Okay.
not.
One term, I caught you.
Yes,
By the way-
that term didn't exist.
Actually, sorry.
Most of last year didn't exist. So
Yeah, very fair.
The last year wasn't trimesters, it was semester, so there were only 2 terms. Yeah, T3 didn't exist.
true.
Anyway, Andrew Taylor is not scary. We have him next week, but I am just a plug.
What was I gonna say? The next question actually leads really well into like where this question ended off. I'm also going to note that I'm going to turn my video off for a little bit because I have some food and I don't want this to turn into a mukbang. But the next question is sort of like, I guess we've talked about your journey up until here so far. And the question wants to know what the actual reason is that you sort of stuck around.
Nobody's buying my slow running excuse. Damn. I can't remember who it was. Someone in Discord dubbed me the slow run any percent champion. And sure, once I went and looked up what that meant, yes, I could believe that. The reason was largely for at least the first few years because I was working part or full time elsewhere. I worked in a startup. It was incredibly successful startup, actually, even at the point where I left. They just got bought after having bootstrapped, after having had a reasonable headcount, after having had several years. I would go so far as to say a decade almost. It could be about a decade of sort of being in existence, and then they got bought. The successful startup. That, aside from that, mainly because teaching is the common wisdom is teaching is about 6 units of credit if you're teaching a course, doing 2 tute labs, a la 1511 or 1521. And so, I underloaded and ran part-time loads for many years. Also got the hang of how to be better at being a student, I guess, and picked up the pace a bit. So that's largely why I'm still here, because I want to get this bloody degree. I've put in this much work. I am not going to be sunk costed out of this. As for, I'm planning on finishing. I'm at least planning on finishing my, I'm in a comp sci program. I'm going to finish a comp sci degree. I would like to do honors, assuming that someone is foolish enough to take me on for honors. I've seen a few suggestions by people saying that they would, so I'm not too worried. But that's sort of the plan. 3+ has not helped. I will definitely say that. Nor did 2020, with all of the wonderful things that it brought with it. But yes, that's more or less why I'm still here.
How many courses do you have left?
4. If I've got my numbers right, I had 3 or 4.
Yeah, you can probably graduate this year or next year.
I mean, my plan last year was I'm going to finish this year, and then 2020 happened. So my plan this year is I'm going to finish this year. So unless, I don't know, the world
2021 happened.
unless someone bloody nukes Australia or something, that's probably going to happen. I'll probably wind up finishing the end of this year. Will I be going away? Very probably not. I would definitely like to do more stuff at CSE. I really enjoy teaching. I've been doing some research related stuff lately, and I've been really enjoying that. So long as the school is happy to employ me, I'll keep coming back.
Awesome. This is a fun question. You might want to move your camera around. How many monitors do you have?
Right in front of me right at this moment. See, the problem is that this webcam is showing its age, and I'm not actually sure that it would survive me moving it at the moment. I have a horrible suspicion it's got a short somewhere up the cord, right up the end.
But we want Disco Jashank.
What you're going to get is a screen full of line noise followed by nothing if you're not careful.
Yeah, that's Disco Jashank. We love him.
Oh, yeah. And that's also why this webcam sometimes strobes. Let me know if it does that, please. There are 6 displays. Have I counted that right? 7 displays currently in front of me, more or less. One of the reasons that I was so excited to get my new laptop at the end of last year which was a whole adventure in and of itself, was the very interesting note buried away deep in a data sheet of a graphics processor that nobody was reading apparently at the time. It can drive 4 screens. And for me, coming from, yes, Intel graphics, this is great, but you can only drive 3 screens. Oh, that hurts. Now I'm driving 4 and it's great. I love it. And then there's another, how many screens kicking around? Another 3 screens kicking around off various other boxes and so on and so forth. I have just been told that I have a way to show you around. Let me try this.
Is he grabbing a mirror?
Ooh,
That would be big IQ.
I'll be big brain.
For all of the work I do on reflections, that wasn't what I had in mind.
Oh. Is that a Microsoft LifeCam HD 3000 I see there?
Nope. It's a C922, I want to say. Logitech C922. And I think I can even switch to it.
Yay!
Hello, the nostrils.
That's the full setup.
So, let me... Nausea cam.
Ooh.
Wow.
Here is my desk. There you all are off to the side. Hello, internet. We also have... so that's all one system driving those 4 screens. Thank goodness. We also have my old laptop, which you might recognize there. My hand is shaking. My apologies. My old laptop, which you might recognize from this angle. It doesn't look like it's an inch thick, but it's more or less an inch thick. There's another display down on the floor there, another display there, connected to one or other of my workstation or firewall. It moves around depending on what I need it for. So yeah, that's what my desk looks like in that direction. Probably of interest is if I wander out this way a bit, and I apologize if I get a bit quiet, but my mic arm doesn't go quite far enough. Down here in the mess, we have, a bunch of servers and a bunch of other cool stuff. So yeah, I like my home lab. Unfortunately, work from home became very distracting because look, fun toys to play with. Other side of the world, we have big pile of stuff that hasn't been unpacked from moving because everybody has one of those, I'm sure. Printer, that is reliable. Yes, it's a dot matrix that feeds tractor paper. What? OP1 that I need to fix, air conditioner, that's sort of it. That's the world.
I'm going to preempt a lot of questions that I'm sure are about to come through on the Slido.
Oh dear.
You need to explain your keyboard to everyone. I am certain everyone's going to be asking.
So this is, I don't actually know if my video out is flipped horizontally, but the video that I see is flipped horizontally.
No, it's fine. It's
good.
Normal.
This is the Kinesis Advantage. It's I have no idea why it's this popular, but it's incredibly popular as a quote-unquote ergonomic keyboard. I bought this while I was working at a startup, or while I was working at that particular startup, because at the time I'd been typing on a Logitech MX 5500 or a Logitech Revolution or some such. I think it was the 5500. The worst key travel, the worst resulting RSI. And so I was like, no. The RSI is real. Important health message time. If you are experiencing pain while typing, stop that, get some help. So I stopped that and I got some help, and I dumped a buttload of money on a good keyboard at the time. And yeah, it's been really quite nice. It has QWERTY caps on it, but I don't type QWERTY. So they're more for show than anything else. But I don't think they don't do a blank capped version, but they do a Dvorak capped version of this.
Couldn't you just swap the keycaps around?
No, because because the keycaps are all custom shot.
Oh, okay, right.
which is in some ways incredibly frustrating, but also incredibly nice in terms of how the design works with the keyboard. So I don't know. I like it personally. I think it works quite nicely. So yeah, that's the hellscape that is my desk.
Oh yes, and the trackball on the left. I've just been reminded.
Oh yes. So this might surprise people, for I am right-handed, but my trackball is on the left. I don't know. My right hand is more susceptible to RSI. Having the trackball on the left means that I don't reach for the mouse as much. When I do reach for the mouse, it is definitely an intentioned action. Like I actually have to concentrate to use it. And so there's a sense of I prefer to use a keyboard more. And the stuff I want to do generally doesn't need a mouse enough to worry about it much. So yeah, that's more or less it. And yes, my desk normally does look this messy. I haven't tidied it up especially.
Yeah. Someone really liked the setup. He said, you look like a hacker from the movie.
I would grab my sex sock hoodie, but I don't actually currently know where I've put it. So let's switch inputs. So you can see my ugly mug. There we are.
That was
yeah.
a great room tour.
Yeah.
Tour.
In the background also is my partner's desk when they are at their day job, which they are not presently. Otherwise, we would have no end of heckling from that avenue. Cool. So yes. Oh, and also whiteboards. I love whiteboards. Whiteboards are great. So yeah, that's my desk. Oh, my sex sock hoodies appeared. Oh.
Are we about
Hacker
to?
Man.
Yeah, Hacker Man.
Anyway, yes, this is incidentally. For those of you who are familiar with sex sock hoodies, you might go, hang on, that doesn't look right. Yes, this is a 0th current generation sex sock hoodie in grey. The 0th generation, the ones before, the very first of the runs that the sex sock in its current security society of its current form ran, looked like this. And the printing was there in Smells Like Times Roman. I can't remember why they picked that, but yeah, that's very nice. Very nice hoodies. The latter ones all have that in a different font or embroidered as well, actually, whereas that's just printed. So yeah, that's kind of cool.
Lovely. Did you want to ask the next question, Kai? Or was it my turn? I can't remember.
You go. You're
right.
gonna love it.
All right. So, another question that we have here is, I'll add a R-word warning before we go ahead with this. What could a language like Rust have to offer students of UNSW CSE?
Do you know, I don't actually have a really good answer to this one. I've thought about this a bit, but I don't really have a good answer. The answer that comes to mind just off the top of my head is you learn more about correctness and memory safety. And that I am incredibly in favor of correctness. I'm incredibly in favor of programs that work and do what you want them to. And in some ways, that's an element of you have communicated clearly your intent. So you've used the language correctly and your intent is correct, which is something that's a little bit harder to pin down. And I find that programming in languages like Rust really helps me with at least that latter point, the working out what you need to nail down. I think a lot more about data and how I'm manipulating it. And I think more about how control works in my program. So there's a lot more emphasis on actually thinking about a thing And I know, Zach, you've mentioned this a few times when you've been doing Rust streams in Discord, where you've been thinking, oh, yes, such and such a language feature has yelled at me, but then I've stopped and thought about it and gone, oh, yeah, actually, no, that's true. And after a while, yeah, I've been using Rust since 2013 or 14. And over that time, yeah, I've had that internalized very much, the sense of how to interact with those particular things. And the one thing that's really helped is really all of the other languages that I write. Every language that I pick up, I think I've commented about this before, every language that I learn changes the way I approach programming, and approach programming not just in that language, but in other languages as well. So programming in Rust makes me a lot more aware of memory management in C, for example, and when is an operation safe, when is it not. Learning Haskell taught me a lot about types and how types are such a valuable part of a program to reason about. And so that, to a certain extent, that's how I started getting into program correctness and program reasoning. Before that, I was very much into sort of systems low level, and I really still am, but I really see the value in using a language that is sort of designed and reasoned about, like Rust. Its development, that I've been watching its development for several years, very much a community-driven process, very much a process driven by how to build a language that sort of serves the goals of the language. And so there's features that land in there or are discussed and discarded only if they have value or not, only if they add to the language, add features, add behavior, add reasoning, add soundness to the language or not. So yeah, that's more or less why I really like Rust and why I think it works in CSE, because yeah, I'm all for correctness. Writing a program that compiles is one thing. Writing a program that runs and does what you wanted it to is another thing. And that latter camp and the notions of, formal methods and rigorous reasoning about programs and, thinking about what it means to be a program that is correct or to have a program that is correct, that's very much the domain of languages for me, like Rust, and why I think we should teach it. The problem is where to fit it in. And I am yet to find, I've seen a few good suggestions for ways to do it, but I don't know yet how to do that. I don't yet have a good feeling for what the best approach to introducing that to the CSE curriculum would be. It is something that I have thought about a bit. I have an idea for how to do it, but I don't know yet. This is the bit where I would go, hey, Curtis, do you wanna shill Rust? Because Curtis Miller very much took that up. I don't know if I introduced Curtis to Rust. I feel like I did, but I also don't remember. So, but Curtis seems to be a lot more active in how Rust is valuable as a teaching language. And I very much agree that he would be very well placed to teach Rust to CSE. In a course that would have a waitlist even longer than that of, say, 6771. But fundamentally, what it would be is not about the language Rust. I think that is the only way that a course using Rust anyway would wind up in CSE. The courses like 3141 don't teach Haskell. 3141 is explicitly not a Haskell course. Notionally, 2511 is not a Java course, but 3141 also notionally not a Haskell course. But the thing chosen there is the tool that is the best or most accessible to get the job done. And so trying to find a way to pose the things that Rust make advantageous as a course puts me in the mindset of bringing back something like Comp 4181 or 4133, I think. Again, dead course codes, I don't remember them off the top of my head. This is the bit where if I were in Discord and using a bot, I would ask the bot.
That's the feature you'd add. There you go.
Yes, reminding me about course names and course codes and so on. Yeah, that's sort of where my current thinking about how a Rust course would happen at CSE. It would be a course that used Rust as a vehicle, in the same way that 3141 uses Haskell as a vehicle, in the same way that, well, 6771 doesn't. 6771 is explicitly a course about a language, and that is something that I really, really don't like. Not just the language in question. I'm not a fan of C++, but I'm not a fan of we want to teach you a language. And the reason for that is largely because teaching a specific language, teaching a specific set of skills related to a specific technology is not useful, almost. If I look into my crystal ball and be very optimistic, I can see a future where C++ is dead, buried, and cremated. If I look into my crystal ball and I sort of squint carefully, I can see such and such JavaScript framework being dead. Picking a specific technology and teaching to that technology is a recipe for teaching people to be stuck on a thing and not able to move forward. Instead, teaching a tool, or using a tool, things to be interested in. Things like, we are interested in program correctness. We are interested in types assisting this. We are interested in memory management that is sort of language managed, language enforced patterns of memory usage. That would be the places where I would wind up seeing a Rust course, or a course that used Rust as a vehicle. I don't think it would be a good first year language. I don't think it would be a good language to shift OS 2 or 15212. I would not do AOS in it at the moment, but only because a lot of the tooling isn't there. I could see an avenue for it being useful if the tooling improved. But at the moment, that's sort of a little bit too nebulous for me to want to nail that down and say, yes, you should definitely do this. It's awesome, but I don't think it fits there. But yeah, there are places where I would definitely think Rust would fit really nicely as a vehicle. I would be thinking off the top of my head if I had to go further, really. So
I think I'll quickly also attach a little bit of an ill-fated question, unfortunately.
Oh, yes.
Which is at the top now. It has been asked, will the Rust course be ready before I graduate?
Depends when you're graduating.
Let's imagine this is from the perspective of a first year currently in, let's say, a 4-year degree, because that's sort of either Seng or Comp Honors.
So that puts that at 25-ish.
24.
24, 25. I don't know. I don't yet know. I haven't seen enough concrete planning around seeing a course delivered. The usual lead time that I've seen from we go from nothing to we have a course stood up, the longest or the shortest I've seen that up until very recently, and there is a weird edge case example that I'm sure everybody knows about at this point, but we'll ignore it for the moment, is on the order of 18 months, really. I'm sure that could be faster, but at the same time, I think that's a good amount of time for a course to sort of develop and crystallize and settle into a form where we would be happy to give it to students and go, haha, business. So yes, I apologize if you are thinking that you might get to do a Rust course before you graduate. I wouldn't at the moment. Hold your breath, but it's possible. There are lots of interesting possible things in this universe, and that is one of them.
Zach, you have video off. I have no idea what you're doing, but like, all right, fine. I'll ask the next question.
I'm continuing my eating.
Zach is being sad about the fact that that I'm being a little bit pointed about a Rust course, maybe not making it in the next few years.
I've turned off my camera in protest.
It might. I don't know. At the moment, it would be too much speculation, I think. But I can definitely see that there is a possibility that that could happen.
Okay. Good luck. Yeah. The next question is, what do you mean by help for your RSI?
Oh, yes. So time for a brief digression about hands. Hands are incredibly badly engineered. The anatomical structure of the hand is absolutely atrocious, and the foot as well. Much of the human body's engineering and evolution has wound up in some very strange places. There are some very, very weird things that have happened to the human being, but the hand in particular is very, very vulnerable to typing, it turns out. I mean, most muscles are pretty vulnerable to, or most muscle groups are pretty vulnerable to sort of repetitive similar actions. But if you push that to an extent, they will inflame, things get bad, you wind up with things like RSI happening. In bad cases, that going as far as things like carpal tunnel or proximal cubital tunnel. The way that you wind up making the hand move is just a mess, really. That said, there are ways around that. So if there is pain in your hand, if there is pain in your wrist, talk to a medical professional, talk to a physio, talk to a GP. If you're lucky enough to find one, talk to an occupational therapist who specializes in your hands, because I'm going to take a wild guess that if you're doing a CSE degree, you're probably going to be entering into a lifetime of servitude to a computer. And it would be very, very sad if that were to be cut very short, very quickly by you being unable to use that computer. I have had a lot of trouble with RSI over the last, I don't know how many years at this point. I fell over badly in a martial arts accident in 2004, 2005, I think. And my right hand never quite recovered. And so it's not too bad these days, but it is very easy if I'm pushing to do stuff. For example, with short deadlines, turning around lots of marking, with short deadlines, turning around an entire assignment, stuff basically that means that I'm sitting here typing for a long time. Ways that you can stamp on it quickly, get yourself... Sup, Zach? Ways that you can get on top of it quickly include getting your hands on something like Workrave, or something else that will cause you to stop using your hands for a period of time, take a break, relax, and then continue with what you were doing. I have found that one of the best ways to do this is with things like a standing desk, because it is much easier to wander away and stop typing and think about a thing if I am not sat down. The transaction cost of me going from sitting down to standing up and wandering off is high enough that doesn't happen all that much. So you wind up sat down for like 5 hours and you go, what happened? Yeah, flip side, if you are in pain, don't work through the pain. Doing things like getting a keyboard that suits your problem, or that attempts to help with your problem. Getting things like trackballs, doing particular patterns of exercises. Don't run out and do that until you've talked to someone who knows what they're doing. I don't. The only experience I have here is one of having gone through it, having done the things. And I think in some places I've been hasty in grabbing an ergonomic keyboard like this one, or I'm not quite so convinced by, or not quite so on the fence about the trackball, but the trackball on the left was probably a better decision than having it on the right. Talk to a medical professional. I'm not one. because they're going to be actually, qualified. Because if there's one thing that I'm definitely not at the moment, it's qualified really to talk about medicine or anything else, I guess, for that matter. But we'll let that slide for the moment. And yeah, if you've got RSI, I would like to say that help is at hand. I'd like to say that it is possible to get past. It is possible to continue to be productive, to continue to do useful work. But it is very difficult. You have to have a lot of discipline because you need to make sure that you are looking after yourself, your own human corpse, before it turns into one. And for those of you on Discord, you'll probably know that I rant about sleep a lot. Sleep is another thing that is really important. Eat well, sleep well, be balanced and caring of your body. And don't, as I have, learn those lessons the hard way. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot for those are really good advice for computer science students.
Cool.
Look after your body. You're going to need it for a while.
I think that was also a relatively big topic in your burnout talk, looking after your body.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very much so.
Also,
and one that I advocate strongly. I do not believe that, well, I'm not one for thinking that I'm going to get another body anytime soon.
I think I also may have yelled halfway through because I just realized I've been adjusting my gain on my mic because I don't have a volume on my mic. So enjoy me yelling. Cool. I think we should just do a real quick one here that we sort of do to all of our guests.
Less heavy.
Maybe, excuse me, my Dorito is coming back up clearly. So we ask this to all of our guests.
I'm sorry. How did you pronounce that?
I said Dorito.
Do you want to try that again, but pronounce it correctly?
I have no idea. How would you
I would
pronounce?
assume that it would be pronounced Torito.
Oh.
Or similar.
Because I'm not going to try because
Spanish,
I think it would just
J.
come out poorly.
This is one of the reasons that I don't want to move to certain Germanic parts of Europe because I don't want to be Jashank Jeremy.
That's true. Cool. So actually, I think we'll just do this last question here. You can rant about it for a couple minutes and then we'll probably take a break.
Cool.
Yes, and Mark's asking if we're in a special microphone club. We already had that moment before the AMA stream started with, hey, Jashank, nice mic.
Yes.
And then, hey, Zach, nice mic. So anyway.
Oh, man, I just saw a great remark by Peter in YouTube chat saying people crushing their hands playing games SSB, StarCraft. Yes. Oh, yes. I had my hands destroyed by which was a Nintendo Switch Pro controller. I have no idea how it ruined my hands quite so badly, but oh my God. And also worse, I watch a competitive esport that involves using one's hands in sort of at high speed, and the people who are at the top of that field who are sort of devotees of this particular style of play wherein they're, tapping on a D-pad at, 10, 15, 20 hertz. My God. They're complaining their hands hurt, and I'm going, fools. So anyway.
And for anyone interested, I'm assuming that high competitive esport game would be Tetris?
How did you guess?
Wow.
Yes. I last year got into NES Tetris, and I am not by any means competitive at a world level, but I'm not too bad. I
can imagine that when your controller is literally like a brick, it probably particularly ergonomic.
Definitely want to get my hands on a real NES because I've only ever been playing it on an emulator, and emulators, input latency, blah 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 blah. Hard to play a game that is sort of very very cycle locked.
I believe the Nintendo 64 was MIPS based, wasn't it?
Actually, a lot of game consoles were MIPS based.
So time to emulate the Nintendo 64 in MIPS.
Unfortunately, this is the NES, not the N64.
Ah, I see.
The NES is a 16 55 CO2 that has been stripped down and clocks at whatever it is that's necessary to drive NTSC or PAL frequencies. And the end result is very, shall we say, constrained. So yes, I'd love to see an emulator that can do that. But yeah.
Sorry, so actually, I'll bounce back to the other question before we have our quick 5-minute break. And again, we ask this to everyone. Feel free to have as much or as little rant as you'd like. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
This answer is going to drive someone bananas.
Banana on pizza?
No. No. Ananas. Pretty much every one of the Romance languages calls them ananas, and then English is like, ha, pineapple. So it's great. You get to pun on multilingual. Anyway, me explaining my jokes aside, I think pineapple on pizza is excellent. I am very much in the pineapple on pizza club. What I do not want to see on pizza is meat, because pretty much every possible meat you can put on a pizza is trash.
Shots fired.
Shots indeed fired. This is a topic of some contention, debate, I'm sure. YouTube hasn't caught up with it yet. Now they have.
Now they have.
I look forward to seeing what that lobbed brick looks like.
Yes, people are visibly upset. So maybe with that, we'll take
a short break.
For everyone to scream. I'd like to remind everyone to submit a bunch of questions in the Slido. Maybe I'll actually relink that in our chat here. So here we are. Add some extra questions in, upvote the questions or like the questions that you want to see answered. And I suppose we'll be back in about 5 minutes or so. And we should be live again. Hello, everyone. Did you want to start us off with the first question now that we're back, Kai?
Yeah. This question Zach has alluded to. Yeah.
I
So your
See if I
burnout
can
talk.
get audio back.
Yeah, in your burnout
Stream.
talk last year.
Zach, do you
Sorry?
want to just check that you're streaming out audio?
Let's see.
Oh, I see.
I think it's fine.
I think the audio is working. Can anyone in the chat confirm?
Yes, there we go. Yeah, cool. No, that's working. My apologies. YouTube decided that the correct thing to do was put my focus not on the mute button. Anyway, let us move along.
Okay, yeah. So someone said, I went to your burnout talk last year and cut down my commitments for this year, but I can't help feeling like I could be doing more.
Yes, this is the one that I have to oh dear, I have this problem as well. Don't worry, it is a real problem. I do not have a good answer for how to not feel like you are doing not enough. I really don't yet. That's something that I'm working on still, because I too have issues of, excuse me, I too have issues of, I wish to, there we go. I wish to do more things and I'm not doing enough. And, you know, it would be much, much cooler to do more stuff, but I don't have a good answer to that yet. As for a lot of the things that came up in my burnout talk and the entire hour of questions that followed it, this is one of the ones where it would be very cool to have a good answer to that. But, yep, sorry, I don't have one at the moment. Perhaps think about things that are more, not necessarily productive, but are liable to be better for you, I guess. So one of the things that I've picked up this year is actually, you know, exercising. So I've been playing a fair bit of Beat Saber for no particular reason. And that has been incredibly useful. And yes, it feels like, yeah, I'm just playing games, and I get told that a bit by various people. Oh, it's just a game. Yeah, no. Actual exercise, actual positive rewards, blah, blah, blah. But thinking about that as a thing, not of, what's the word, as a commitment to myself, almost a commitment to my own continuing good health and well-being and swole shoulders. That's, yeah, the best I've currently got in the way of suggestions for that. So think about, I guess, what works for you as being productive. Again, balance, being thoughtful, but keep in mind that there needs to be time dedicated in there for you. And that is one of the places where I've been able to find that I am cutting back commitments and actually putting something in their place that is actually more useful to me long term.
Cool, great. Yeah, so our next question that we have in here, I think it's relatively fair to assume comes from our resident Elm and ex-monad shill Shrey, who asks, you know, so delightfully, why is ex-monad great? If I recall correctly, Jashank, I believe you use i3 more than ex-monad.
I would probably switch to ex-monad if I had a good reason, if I had an equivalent to all of the things that I currently use in i3, and I haven't yet done that or put the time and effort into building that, so it's not something that I've done. I very much like ex-monad, the concept, and in fact, it's not the first time that I've seen a really nice concept like that, where you take a nice language, a nice way of reasoning about how a problem should be solved in window management, and then you actually can sort of configure that in a very nice, pleasing way, but in a very sort of, you get your hands all of the dirty all of the way sort of mechanism. You can dip right the way down into HSCB if you want from Xmonad, as far as I'm aware, and everything is fine. But I am personally not a user of it because, yeah, I haven't gotten as far as setting it up. And for the things that I want, i3 fits my use cases better. I could see switching maybe if I had good reason to, and good reason would probably look like a handful of the features that I want being implemented, which would be probably some work on my part to actually do. Yeah, I love the concept though. And actually, this is something that I really like in general, and probably it might be known that I am the resident Emacs shill. In the same way that, we've got Elm shills and Rust shills. Yes, I'm the Emacs shill. But I was thinking about why I like Emacs quite as much as I do, and it's for a very similar reason to why I like Xmonad, and very similar reason to why I like being able to a certain extent, I guess it's the same sort of thing with things like Isabelle Hole and so on, which I've been really loving playing with of late. You have a system that you can reach inside of, and you can explore, and you can put together, and you get a real understanding of how the system works. And with Xmonad, yeah, you're putting together window management. You're assembling the primitives, the building blocks, but you are also not stopped from going into those building blocks and looking at them and going, no, I don't like these. I want to build my own. And you have all of the mechanism there to do that. Similarly with Emacs, yes, it is all this great big Lisp monster, but that doesn't stop me having things like, yeah, I have an email client in here, but I can graft into it features that I want. So I want to do some stats on, how much email I see and I file, and I could graft that in. That was doable, and so on and so forth. And it's that that interoperability, the introspection, the being able to sort of enjoy one's environment, the truly personal of personal computing. That is absolutely 100% what I am in favor of, and that's why things like Xmonad appeal to me, and Sawmill or EWMH, or sorry, XEWM, or what else? To a certain extent, DWM and similar. I guess this is something that a lot of the Plan 9 systems did and Lisp machines did, but now I'm just showing my age. So let's move on before anything more embarrassing comes out about my environment.
Yeah.
I think I'll just really quickly add, Shrey's reminded me I should probably explain really quickly what Xmonad or i3 is. So these are basically window managers. When you're using your operating system, like using Windows or your Mac OS or whatever else, it's basically the system that lets you have windows you drag around and a desktop and icons and all this. On VLab,
varying extents.
Yeah. On VLab, we use something called XFCE. So if you've used VLab before and you're like, wow, this looks different to what my Windows machine looks like, that'd be why it uses something called XFCE. If you use Ubuntu, these days it uses something called GNOME. And these are all sort of windowed managers where you drag windows around, and very familiar with that. Xmonad and i3 are both something called tiling window managers that sort of like tries to automate ordering the windows around your desktop, and have nice, like a lot of keyboard shortcuts to move things around and sort of split them like this, and are very configurable like that. So that's what we were sort of just talking about there before we move on.
Yeah, and if you want to learn more about it, there's a workshop coming out from Shrey.
Oh, goody.
Xmonad.
Shrey, I am looking forward to this. I am very much looking forward to hearing about this. For what it's worth, I really love the notion of good window management, and I have used many window managers over the last, I don't know how long, but yeah, there is a whole world of, this is like a lot of the things in a Unixy, Linuxy system. Once you strip away the defaults that you get or are enforced upon you, there is so much down there. Like, you can change shell when that's not even a concept that you can reason about, or on other OSs, you can change the way window management works. You can change the way browsing the web works, or exploring files in your system, or exploring your email and whatever. It's so much. That's what I have always really loved about running Unixy systems. And yeah, things like window manager selection makes such a huge difference in sort of your experience of a system. Anyway, less windbagging from me. Have another question.
Yeah, let's jump to the next question. What languages do you know? Not necessarily programming languages. Can be both.
Okay, human languages. Well, that's much easier. There's this language called English, which I am supposedly good at. Spoiler, I did not do well in English in the HSC. Yeah.
I love the idea of failing English as a student. Like, you've been learning this your whole life. If you're not really looking past the name of the class, I suppose. But
yeah, the thing that amuses me most is at the same time I was running a school newspaper, and being really careful about things like
long live the Tertullian.
Oh yeah, good times. I was very much in favor of witty headlines, making sure stories are edited and well written and filled out this thing correctly, and at the same time, English, the prescriptivists. I love English the language. It is such a bizarre higgledy-piggledy mess that it's just so much fun to play with, and that to a certain extent is why I crack jokes all the time, and a lot of those rely on me being able to just do horrible things with English or other languages as might be. I have at varying points learned bits of Mandarin, bits of Japanese. I've learned a fair bit of Hindi. In fact, Hindi is sort of my second, I guess, language, although I don't use it as much as I really could to count as sort of fluent. I would love to learn more. So I guess, CSE Sock Hindi workshop when. I have previously also dabbled in a few other human languages, but yeah, mostly just English, I guess, and enough Hindi to hurt myself usually. In terms of programming languages, I've only got 40 minutes left, so let's not get into that quite yet. No, it's not quite that bad. I have programmed in many languages. I should probably put a list somewhere because it's just outrageous how many languages I've wound up using at some point or other.
Maybe to make a shorter question of it, maybe like what are the sort of top 5 languages that you'll productively use in a given day? Just like what editors are open right now that you've got? Emacs, Lisp, and maybe some C.
I've got a tool for this. Which is saying that I need to log in. Can I just hit the login button and it will log me in? I don't know. Let's find out. Cool. According to this, recently I've been programming in C, Emacs, Lisp, Rust, Mathematica. I'm not entirely certain I believe that. Isabelle HOL, which again, I'm not particularly productive with. Scala. Objective-C? No. Rubbish. Okay, I ignore this list and substitute my own. I tend to write a fair bit of shell. I tend to write lots of shell scripts. I write a fair bit of C, write some assembly for a few architectures, Haskell, Rust. I'm learning standard ML, and so there's a fair bit of that currently bouncing around inside my head. What else am I aware of or across? Perl, Ruby. Enough JavaScript to be able to hurt myself. Yeah, that's sort of the common languages that I'll reach for in a day. A lot of the things that I do with tools like Perl and Awk and so on are sort of 2041 domain stuff where I'm not going to see a text editor buffer open with some Emacs or with some Perl kicking around. But in the same way, there is Emacs Lisp kicking around. And so, yeah, I'm spelunking around inside my text editor, doing things like making. What was I doing today before I rebooted this hot mess? I was looking at something in Lisp. I can't remember what it was. I'm sure my long-term memory buried away over here can remind me, but that's just a distraction from someone asking me another interesting question, I suppose.
I'd just like to add as well that I think it was probably like an hour and a half before this AMA started or something. Jashank sent me a text that said, When's the AMA? Where's it going to be? It's going to be over here. Great. Hopefully my kernel is rebuilt in time.
Yeah, so I installed an updated kernel, which landed a patch that had a broken networking stack, and I therefore didn't have a network connection on my laptop for about 4 hours this afternoon. So that was fun. Yeah, I love living in the bleeding edge of madness. Anyway, yes, me and my fun misadventures later.
Cool. So I think our next question here is, if you were the Vice Chancellor of UNSW, what changes would you make to the uni, or CSE more specifically, other than 3+?
So rolling back 3+ would absolutely be one of the top things on my list if I was VC. If I was VC, I would be restoring nice 12 and 13 week teaching periods. I'd be restoring that nice balance of semesters that line up with, for example, New South Wales school holidays, which allow people to go overseas in the events that they do that, allows them to have internships sensibly, all of the things. Because I remember seeing all of the 3+ drivel and propaganda, and it was crap. And we have seen that it is, in fact, crap. I have many, many hours of rage over 3+ that I'm sure this AMA is too narrow to contain. Other things I would do where I VC, I would be radically and urgently looking at how pay is structured for senior positions in the uni, because holy hell, the VC gets paid an awful lot. And a lot of the people at that sort of senior level get paid an awful lot, and I'm not entirely certain I agree that they should be, because they don't seem to do much except make my life harder. And with all the money that's freed up, hire more staff to fill, for example, roles that are predominantly filled by casuals. I would be avoiding blinkered pursuit of magic numbers and rankings in favor of actually, focusing on making teaching better, focusing on making our research output more interesting. There is a blind and relentless and reckless pursuit of that level of number-based chasing. And the adage of nothing that is worth measuring can be measured as true here. To boil down student satisfaction into a number is crap. To boil down student knowledge of a course is crap, but that's a different conversation. I am very strongly in favor, instead of not rankings and leaderboards and that crap, but instead actually, putting some effort into making the university a better place, and actually having some less quantitative, measures for that, because we don't have any. And also, oh my God, also not just blindly assuming that if I put a plan into place, it will succeed. And instead having things like ways to tell if it has succeeded. 3+, I asked back in 2016 or 17, made some people very angry, I'm sure. How do we know that this has succeeded? How do we know whether this has succeeded? What do we need to say to assume, yes, 3+ works? What do we do if it doesn't? And there wasn't any plan for it. And there wasn't any measuring in place. There wasn't any thought to how to evaluate in place. And no, don't do that. Don't do that. That doesn't make business sense. And I'm not even a business person. You make a change, you need to know why that change made sense to make. You don't just go arbitrarily twiddling the knobs and hoping for the best. Anyway, I could pontificate at length about why that sucks, but 3+ regrettably is wound up atop us, and I would love to roll it back, but I don't see it happening in the near future, and I'm very sad about this. Anyway, have you got a less depressing question?
Yeah, 100%. Who's your favorite 1511 lecturer?
Who's my favorite 1511 lecturer? I am required, I think, to say Andrew Bennett. Who has not decided to make a cameo. That's quite disappointing. I would definitely say, yeah, Andrew B is my number one favorite 1511 lecturer, followed by this crazy guy named Jashank Jeremy. I don't know but he did a couple of 1511 lectures. He seems pretty reasonable. Yeah, that's where I sit. I see Mark going, what? Yeah, Mark knows why that's the case. No hard feelings for you, Mark, but also I'm reminded of that time when I was chatting with Mark during a lecture break and someone came in to spruik a thing and they looked at me and they looked at Mark and I'm, looking like this and Mark looks like, Mark usually does. And this is back in the day when we had real lectures. And so no chicken, sadly. But this person looks at me, looks at Mark, looks back at me and goes, "Excuse me, Professor." And I'm like, what? What's going on here? Anyway, nonsense, silly questions. Yeah. Yeah, that was a strange day. Yeah. I have seen much less, I guess, of Mark's lecturing than I probably would like to have. But all the things I've seen of Mark lecturing have been, wow, fantastic. Definitely on par with the first year experience I had, definitely sort of at the level of here is a person who is dedicated to making sure students across CSE are doing well. I've also seen lecturing by, let's see, Andrew Taylor, Jas, Ashesh, all fantastic. I adore pretty much all of them, really. And I'm not just saying that because I don't want to be fired, but I actually genuinely really do like the lecturing styles that Jas and Ashesh and Andrew Taylor use, because in some ways, yeah, I find those are things that I can engage in and things that interest me and things that take me in the direction that I want to learn in. It feels very much like, yeah, this is how I want a lecture to be.
Great, perfect. There's the question at the top now. I'm going to abstain from asking because that's an at the end of the AMA question. So we'll move along to another fun sort of short question here. Is the reason you want in-person exams back so you can yell at students again? And I would like to recall a distinct memory of Jashank standing on a table in J17.
Yes.
Welcome, Comp 1521 students.
Yes. I really do enjoy the running of exams in that practical sense of getting students going around in circles and into exams and into and out of rooms. And I find that so much fun to do. I don't know why. It's hairy and there's all manner of exciting things happen. But no, I really much prefer in-person exams, if only because it is much easier to stay on track, I guess, during exams when, you are in an exam room and here is your booklet, or you are here at a lab workstation in the exam environment and there's no world of distraction around you. I personally am very much a fan of that. And that's one of the things that I really struggled with when March last year came around, working from my wonderful home lab where, everything is broken half the time and having to go from being this wonderful, exciting place where I'm continuing to break things to, I have to work out of here every day and not just, weekends and evenings. So that I find, I don't like working from home all that much because I have always sort of considered home and even home office to be, this is a place where I enjoy doing the interesting things that I do. This is the place where I would much prefer hacking on some code of my own volition, and not, sitting here listening to a lecture and scribbling notes, but also, I wonder what's happening over on Discord. Someone's yelling on Slack. I wonder what Twitter's up to at the moment. Have I got an email? I have not, in fact, got an email. But anyway, you get the point. I do not like that very distracting environment. I can see people who, I can see people who would enjoy working from home. I do not, personally.
Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting insight. Did you read the whole Perl spec?
There's a Perl spec? That therein lies the joke, right? The Perl as a language, I don't think has a spec. Perl 6 was sort of developed from one, and that, well, we all know what happened to Perl 6. I have read a lot of Perl. I've read a lot of its documentation. I've read inside the main implementation of it in order to answer questions about how the language works, and it's fascinating stuff. Very, very interesting. Would I call myself the world's leading authority on Perl? Oh, God, no. There are many more qualified people than I to talk about Perl. I personally quite like it. One of my first languages that I ever learned, which probably goes a long way to explaining why I am this way, doesn't it? Yeah. I guess I have seen a fair bit of Perl. I wouldn't call myself a spec lawyer of Perl, but I saw earlier a question asking the same thing of C. And for that, the answer is no, I have not read the entire spec. I've read a lot of it, but not all of it.
Great.
There's another question. Do you actually like Perl?
Yeah, I quite like Perl. There are things in it that I would change, but there's things in basically every language that I would change. There are things in every language that I use that I go, I wish this was more like this other thing. Someday, I will get around to building my own language, but it is not this day. There are things that I definitely would like to be in that language, and there are certainly things from Perl that I would lift into that language, because there are things about Perl that are very, very nice, and things that Perl does that other languages have picked up, in fact, that I think are very, very nice.
I've just noticed as well, Ollie's made a good quip in the YouTube chat, which I'm going to adapt into a question quickly. Have you ever had a crack at making your own language, Jashank?
At varying points, yes. With varying levels of success. Have I done so recently? Not particularly. I probably am about due to have a bad idea and write a language again. There's a great quote by, I think it's LP to Deutsch, which goes something like, sometimes I'm struck by the urge to develop a new programming language, but then I just lie down until it goes away. And I think it's paraphrasing something else. But at the moment, I am still sort of content to learn the things that I like in languages before actually setting out to build my own. But there are a lot more things, and I feel a lot more equipped to do that now, having spent a lot of time looking at how languages work and how reasoning about programs work and how correctness works. I feel a lot better equipped to do that. And I feel like I have the tools in hand necessary to at least hurt myself making an effort towards building a new language. What would it look like?
LVM.
It would probably wind up being in the sort of ballpark of Rust behavior in terms of compilation. So yes, it would probably compile to native, but it would also probably have mechanism for interpreted execution, because I feel like languages that bridge that gap really well are really great to develop on and work with. And so I'm thinking here of languages like, what's a good language that fits into this gap? Compiled and interpreted. I mean, to a certain extent, pretty much every interpreted language is compiled to a certain extent. Python is notionally compiled, Perl is notionally compiled, Ruby is notionally compiled, and some languages take this further into full just-in-time compilation to a machine code thing. Some do bytecode execution. Syntactically, it would probably look a fair bit like an ML, probably like Haskell or Rust. It would have a lot of Haskell's type features, probably some proof features a la LCF, Isabelle Hole. I like the ability to do powerful modular things, and so good FFI, good foreign function interface, being able to call other code that exists. I mean, that's where Python has mostly cornered the market, and being this reusable library language with a weird syntax that seems disturbingly popular. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it in concrete enough terms to sort of want to rattle off a laundry list of what I want to see, what I don't. But yeah, certainly there's things that I definitely want in such a language. And yeah, it is something that I've given serious thought to. Probably want to give more thought to it. Anyway.
Cool, great. Did you want us next question, Kai?
Sure. Shane, someone asked, what's your WAM?
Can I exercise my right not to answer that?
I think
Yeah,
you definitely
sure.
Let us go with not wonderful and move along.
Yes, you answer the second part,
yeah.
though. Why do WAMs not matter?
Hi. WAMs don't matter. I have a terrible WAM. I have had a terrible WAM for many years. It has improved a lot of late, but WAMs are... Oh, I want to make a terrible joke about they're a great band, but that's just my 80s showing. I don't know. WAMs are a function of marks and some arbitrary number that says how much work that was expected you put in. And in and of themselves, both of those are just more arbitrary numbers. I don't feel there's anything good to be had by just picking an arbitrary number and another arbitrary number and smashing them together and calling that good. I don't believe there's anything to be gained from smashing a whole bunch of those arbitrary numbers together and calling that a student's overall progress in their degree, in their program, in their life, because that's not what it is. I do not like, in some ways, I don't like final exams for that. The sort of big crunch at the end where you don't know necessarily how you're going to come out of that. I think the courses that I have done the worst in have been ones where that has been the case. I was thinking quickly to make sure that is in fact true. Yeah, I'd call it mostly true. The courses where I've done worst in have been courses where I have not been really aware of where I was in the course at the end, but even that's mediated by marks, right? There's some magic number that says how well you're doing in a course. I do not like that. I would prefer to be able to say something like what I think TAFE New South Wales does this, where you have a list of competencies and the student is declared competent or not in a particular thing. And I believe there might even be some sort of gradation in that where it's, they're competent or they're extremely competent or something such. I don't know. But I would love to see that more than marks, because I feel like that takes the emphasis away from an arbitrary number chosen from more arbitrary numbers, which goes with another bag of arbitrary numbers and winds up on an arbitrary piece of paper. Instead, I would much prefer that students care about what they're learning. As a student, I really prefer to, I found myself doing this as well, the thing that I hate students doing. And it's very, very funny to have both of those thoughts in my head at the same time, where as staff, I'm like, oh God, why are you arguing over 1/1000th of a mark? And at the same time, I'm going, ooh, I am going to lose about 3 marks on this 10% of 1% of 3%. Marks motivate the wrong thing, I guess. And this is where I'm going to, flip back over to chat and see where, because there's an expert here who's actually taught in this sort of environment. Mark Chi has done this, and yeah, competency is very much what you get out of sort of more proper training organizations. But learning that, leaning into that would be such a great thing. yeah, I think that's sort of my thoughts on the matter, really. Don't be too worried if your WAM is terrible. My WAM is terrible. My ATAR was awful, incredibly, but no one cares about ATARs. No one really cares about WAMs. There are certain edge cases where people do care about WAMs. Yes, I know. And I don't think they should. But this is another one of those things oh, that's a great question by Michael there. Comes back down to one of those interesting things of, are we optimizing for the wrong thing? But yes, we are. But if we look at the flip side, which is trying to optimize for the right things, because only we are doing it and everyone else is optimizing for the wrong things, we sort of have to. We have WAMs because everybody else has WAMs. We have marks because everybody else has marks. We have, what's the other terrible example that popped into my mind earlier? Nope, it's gone. This happens. My apologies. Someone mentioned earlier something, and I went, oh, yeah, that'd be an interesting point to come back to, and it's completely escaped me. It's one of those things where if everybody except you is doing a thing, and you are not doing the thing, or you stop doing that thing, that's a really difficult move to make in pretty much every circumstance. And for things like marks, for things like WAMs, that is something that we won't be able to get away from because there is so much stock put in it, usually by people who are only interested in the number at the bottom of the number at the bottom, because their metric, because they're measuring on something that is not relevant, something that is just arbitrary and made up and bleh. Anyway, there's some very interesting ed theory into why marks are terrible, and marks are terrible. I don't like marks, but I do like it when I have them. And I'm sure most students do as well. So I don't know. I miss the days when I could just be satisfied with the text, all tests passed, you are awesome. But that's just me showing my age.
Great. So our next question here, I'm not 100% sure what to make of this question, so I'll just ask it how it's written. Jashank, how did you make WebCMS? Oh, okay, so is this a pun on Jazz Jashank?
Yes. I am not John Shepherd, for starters. I may tab complete similarly, but I'm not John Shepherd. I've received, I want to say, 3 emails in the last 3 or 4 years that have been misaddressed. I am actually amazed the number is that low. And I'm sure you've all seen the memes. They're the same person, etc. No. How did I make WebCMS? Well, if I put on my Jas hat, which would require a lot of hair to go with it and a beer, lots of thesis students is the correct answer to that. I did not make WebCMS. I would like to play with its innards someday, but it's not something, well, not WebCMS 3 anyway, not something that I've had a finger in much. WebCMS 3 is actually more or less the 3rd version of that system. And yeah, all 3 versions, I think, were built by a combination of thesis students and just sort of glued together as a result. And really shows also, while I'm thinking about it, the evolution of web technology over time. As I do recall, WebCMS version 1, the original, the OG, was written in TCL. WebCMS 2, some of you might remember it and might have seen it, was PHP. WebCMS 3 is Python. Anyway, that tells a story, doesn't it? Yeah. How did I make WebCMS 3? Thesis students, special project students. Were I wearing my Jas hat and hair and beer, which I'm not. So, interesting question though. I do like it.
And Trey also wants to know when WebCMS 4 is coming out, and maybe what language is WebCMS 4 going to be coming out in? Jazz?
Well, the front end is going to be built in what is it? Rust WebAssembly, and the back end is going to be built in Rust, of course.
Perfect.
It's going to be Rust. It's just Rust all the way at this point. I don't know. I would love to say I knew much about what would happen with WebCMS 4, but WebCMS 3 hasn't demonstrated that it is broken enough to warrant more thesis students throwing more time at it yet.
I've heard
I'm
it hasn't
sure
even
that
gone
point.
down before.
I'm sure we will reach the point of WebCMS 4 somewhere in the next decade, I guess. But that's, again, pure speculation.
Perfect.
What a
Wait, Jashank, didn't you say
fun question.
you got some approval for like doing thesis? Are you gonna make WebCMS 4 as your thesis?
So here's an interesting problem. I'm not sure I could do a development thesis. It may be that because I'm a comp sci student, I don't get the choice, or I don't get a choice to do something which requires actual sort of writing of code. That said, I would love to, write code, but WebCMS is probably not where I'd wind up doing a thesis and spending honors work. I would probably, I don't know where I would wind up doing that. I have a few guesses, but nothing sort of firm enough for me to say, yes, that's where I'm going.
Cool, great. Okay, all right, I'll take again. Blah, blah, blah. We'll do a quick rapid fire one here. Where is your accent from?
Somewhere in the back of my throat, usually. It's the whole nasal. Oh, you want the serious answer? Okay. The serious answer is I grew up listening to a lot of old radio comedy. And by old, I mean, 1950s or 40s, 50s, 60s, I guess. British radio comedy. And this is back from the era when the BBC were very posh and proper and required that all members of any production be speaking in the proper Queen's English, in received pronunciation, as they would say. And as such, I can tell you that this is not the BBC World News, but will shortly be the BBC Home Service, followed later on, if you tune your wireless correctly, to the BBC Light programme. So a lot of that influenced my pattern of speech. As for what else has influenced it, there's a bit of Australian in there, I'm sure. I think the name for the accent I have is traditional Australian. I think that's the name. There's 3 more or less Australian accent families: traditional, general, and broad. Traditional Australian being more or less what I speak, sort of very much a descendant, a very close derivative of RP, the Queen's English received pronunciation. General being sort of what Zach speaks. Say hello, Zach.
Hello, Zach.
Thanks. Damn cynics. This is the problem with computing people. They always do what you tell them. Can you go to the shops, and if they've got bread, get some eggs, and if they've got bread, buy some milk, and you wind up with just a nonsense collection. I forget the joke exactly. So yes, where was I? General Australian, broad Australian is the big old wide outback drawl. Yeah, gonna hit a kangaroo with my car, and other such terrible things. Why I have a mystery lost to the depths of time, why it's formed in this way, more or less just British radio drama and lots of relatively traditional Australian stuff in those formative years when you pick up an accent. I forget what the exact age range is. I used to know it. I have forgotten it since. I'm presuming there's going to be a question that's like, what? How do you know all of this? And it is probably time to mention, I guess, seeing as I'm bearing all of the terrible nightmares and secrets, that once upon a time I trained to be an actor. And so did a fair bit of training in terms of, accent work, voice work, how voice is produced, how accents are produced. So yeah, that's what? You didn't believe that that's why my tutes and labs and lectures look like that? Amazing. Yeah, there's a very real sense of I'm putting that time and effort to good use, I suppose, if I'm not doing it on a stage.
That's cool. That's cool. All right, let's see what questions we have. Oh, someone's interested in your keyboard. Can we get a keyboard sound test? All right.
Let's see whether I can get some keyboard sound. So, let's hang this down.
I like the rhythm.
That'll
Oh,
probably do, I guess.
I'm wondering if your like didn't
following is-
were LS's or L's or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
And following is a demonstration of me typing with this keyboard and other things that one weird cross section of keyboard lovers on YouTube will recognize. Anyway,
Do you know what do you call them? Switch types in your keyboard? We just heard.
Where is my keying tool? I had a keying tool sitting on my desk. Let's do it live and pull this keyboard apart. It is, that looks like a, well, that says cherry. I think it says cherry. Yeah, it's cherry. I think it's a cherry MX Brown.
There you go.
I really didn't realize how much I really like clicky keyboards until I got a clicky keyboard. And now I really love clicky keyboards. Honestly, the one thing that this keyboard is missing is the foot pedal or foot pedals, which I haven't gotten yet, but I want to. They're sort of the next thing that I want to get for this keyboard.
Yay!
Yeah. Hang on.
Not quite.
No, I don't want my control key to go with varying speeds. I would probably, I don't know whether I would get a different keyboard first or foot pedals for this one. I am a little bit less enthused by the fixed width of this. I think I would prefer something with variable width more. And in hindsight, that is the one thing that I think I regret a bit about this. Were I buying another keyboard, I'd probably go for something like an Ergodox or similar, or what are they called now, Moonlanders or something, and probably put some sort of interesting key switch in it. I am inclined to be less generous about just blindly grabbing Cherry MXs, having seen a lot of, what's his name, Michael 22's keyboard stuff, being very sort of anti-MX. What do you use foot pedal? Mark G, you've made the classic mistake. How many times I've seen people do that on IRC over the last few decades. It is great. What do I use foot pedals for? You can use foot pedals for modifiers and so on. And so, for example, I could put Control or Alt or Super or similar on a foot pedal. It'd be great. Or for those of you who are of a slightly more bizarre text editor orientation, you could have an escape pedal. You should know, stamp with vicious fury whenever you want to get out of insert mode or similar.
Visual block.
Anyway, yes, moving along before I scare everyone half to death.
Great. Another relatively quick question. How old are you?
Those have gone. How old am I? Oh my God, that's an excellent question. So God, how old am I? After a certain point, you just forget. So I graduated high school 2013, landed at UNSW 2014. I would have been 18, 19 about that point. 18, 19, 17, 18. I can't remember. 18, 19. So I would now be 20 something, mid-20s, 20. I want to say 5 or 6. You're all just trying to social engineer me here, aren't you? Your social engineering attack is partially successful. Yeah, I'm somewhere in the mid to tending towards late 20s at this point. Who was I chatting to? I was doing a lab at some point and someone asked me this question and I turned around with as you always do, turned around with the question, hey, so, well, they asked, how old am I? I'm like, how old do you think I am? I'm like, 30? I'm like, no. I'm like, 40? I'm like, no. What? No, wrong direction. I'm not Mark Chi. I would look amazing if I were Mark Chi quality at Mark Chi age. That would be incredible.
Great. Perfect. How long have we got? 7:55. All right, Kai, do you want to ask one more question and then we'll do the The finishing question?
Rattle off a bunch of questions really fast. I'm sure there's some good questions that can get probably quick answers, and I'll try and limit myself to quick answer.
Yeah, we can do that. Like one word answer. All right, let's see.
Oh boy.
Pineapple or anything. No, we already asked that. Threats or events?
Threats or events? Oh.
One word only.
Yes.
Risk 5, Comp 1521.
Oh, that would be lovely. In the near future.
Favorite font?
Not sure how near. Oh no, not a hard one. God damn it.
Comic Sans.
No, God, no. If you're gonna have a Comic Sans, at least have the good taste to use Comic Noir. If I had to pick one font, I'd probably go Gotham from Hoffler Fred Jones. Well, Hoffler and Co. now. Monospace font, probably Source Code Pro or Fira Code or similar. That's where I'm currently at in fonts.
StuRep experience.
Yes. Yes, that's the thing that happened. I was StuRep, and then nobody bothered running an election, and so I wound up being StuRep, continuing for a while, and that was depressing. Because I became less and less representative of the student. I was thinking I should run for StuRep again, and then I thought, hang on, no. If I'm a representative student, then what the hell happened to our students? Yikes.
Mark wants to know password to your bank account.
Hunter2.
Yeah, there it is. And
as
Andrew,
required by law.
And obviously Andrew's wondering our mother's maiden name as well.
I'm trying to think of a sufficiently good joke answer. Yeah. I'm just not getting one at the moment.
Correct horse battery staple.
Well, that's an interesting name.
Yeah.
I was going to go with, I don't know, Conway.
Conway works. Bobby Tables.
Wilson. I'm just name dropping various cool computer science people, you know, just casually. I don't know them. I wish I did. They're some fantastic people in the field. Anyway.
True.
Let's go to the last question.
Okay, there you go. Yep.
Yeah. What question will we could have asked you, but we didn't, and what would be your answer?
You knew this was coming. It comes for everyone. What should we have asked you, and what's the answer?
God, I don't have a good answer. I don't have a good answer or an answer.
So that was the good question.
Yeah,
what was the question?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like all of the ones that people really, really wanted answers to really did get asked already, like how I wound up here, how I wound up teaching, interesting people. Yeah.
Would you like a suggestion? Because I say this because almost everyone said the exact same thing, funnily enough.
Oh no.
Which is we always forget to ask people supposedly about their regrets.
Ooh.
So
what do I regret about being at CSE? That's another really damn good question. I don't have a good answer to that yet. Probably. I mean, there's the obvious, taking courses before I thought I was in a good place to take them, and, taking that program before I thought I was in a good place to take it, perhaps. I don't know. I really don't know. One thing that I could possibly regret. I've had much too much fun along the way to have one particular thing that I would point out and say, I regret this. I have things that have made me sad along the way. There are people out there who think that teaching is not something that I should be interested in. Whoops. My microphone disagrees with that sentiment as well, because teaching is not a thing that I should be interested in. What? No, I much prefer doing it. I don't know. I would much prefer. The regrets that I have are mostly about, not having had the time and experience to give to more students, I guess. I have enjoyed teaching so much for so long. So long, he says. I've only been here how many years? I've enjoyed teaching so much for the time that I've been teaching here. I guess one regret would be that I haven't done more of it, and I haven't had the chance to do what I have had and haven't been able to for varying reasons. Haven't had the time or energy to do more, I guess. But yeah, that way lies spending all of your time and effort on doing things. And we're trying to be better about that, lest we get burned out. Cross promotion for my talk from last year. Yeah, that's, I guess, the thing that I regret most.
Yeah,
Great.
that's it, folks. That's
Oh,
a reference to the
and
slides.
I think that's pretty much seen there then.
Thanks everyone for
yeah.
tuning in. Thanks, Jashank.
Thank you,
No
everyone.
worries. I'll be hanging out in Discord for a bit as well, because I've looked across at Slido and I see there's a bunch of other other good questions kicking around there, and I might field some of those over there as well.
Great.
So yeah,
nicely as well, since this has been live streamed to YouTube, I think we should be able to get this recording up tonight, which is better than like 2 weeks or so that it was taken before. So
Don't make promises. Don't make promises.
we'll try. I think this might end up being my job, so I'll give it a crack. But yeah, thanks again everyone for coming, and yeah, I think if we all want to spam the chat with our big love and appreciation for Jashank for this wonderful AMA, then yeah, we'll let that happen for a little bit.
Now it's your time. Okay, we're waiting for YouTube to 30 seconds lag.
All right, I'll stop.